I'm Peter Lee, and this is Newsbud's China Watch. This week, we're at the tipping point on North Korea. And who's lying about that aircraft carrier? An important week, actually an important day, is coming up for North Korea. The U.S. Special Envoy for North Korea, Joseph Yun, will be in Japan on April 25th for joint meetings with ROK and Japanese officials. April 25th is North Korean Army Day, which is considered to be a likely day for North Korea to do a nuclear test. So Yun's visit is an indication that the U.S. and its allies are planning a joint response in case of a provocation. The White House also revealed Donald Trump will be consulting with Prime Minister of Japan Shinzo Abe and then President of China Xi Jinping by phone on the evening of April 23rd, which is April 24 Asia time. Undoubtedly, they will be gaming North Korea and what they're going to say and do if a test happens. Chinese quasi-state media provided a very strong indication that the PRC would respond to any sixth nuclear test by supporting a UN Security Council sanction that cuts off petroleum products to North Korea. In a sign North Korea might be taking this threat seriously, the DPRK apparently signaled it could do very well without Chinese petroleum products, thank you, by cutting back supply in Pyongyang and spiking prices over 80%. So, you've got a U.S. red line, U.S. attack in case of an ICBM launch, as I discussed last week. You've got a Chinese red line, petroleum sanctions in case of a nuclear test. Where's that leave things? As far as China is concerned, it wants the U.S. to negotiate with the DPRK. As far as the DPRK is concerned, it says it won't negotiate as long as Washington refuses to abandon its hostile policy towards Pyongyang. In related news, according to the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang, which handles U.S. DPRK matters, North Korea detained an American citizen, a professor named Tony Kim, who was trying to fly home. In the past, North Korea has used such detentions to provide a reason for the U.S. to send an envoy to spring the hostage. In 2009, Bill Clinton beat out Al Gore to go to Pyongyang to obtain the release of 2 American journalists. Maybe this indicates Kim Jong-un is looking for an American official or ex-official to talk to directly. If something happens on April 25th, it's big news. If nothing happens on April 25th, that's news too. Well, April 25th is the day after this show tapes and the day before it airs. So whatever happens or doesn't on April 25th, well, that's for next week's show, assuming we're all here. Meanwhile, let's talk about the big deal from last week. Who's lying about the Carl Vinson? This Carl Vinson, the aircraft carrier, and its associated carrier strike group. If you've been following the news, you know there was a big kerfuffle over the Carl Vinson's location. Trump said it was steaming toward North Korea as a show of force to demonstrate that his administration is serious about confronting Kim Jong-un. Then it turned out the Carl Vinson was nowhere near Korea. In fact, it was down by Australia. Immediate takeaway in Never Trump American media, Trump is a liar and an idiot. He doesn't know where his aircraft carrier is. The South Korean press and presidential candidates picked up on this theme, and it became a big international to-do. Let's unpack this a little bit. Team Trump weren't the only people bragging about the Vinson. A bunch of people in the U.S. military said it was headed north. Important people. Exhibit A. April 9, announcement from the U.S. 3rd Fleet. Admiral Harry Harris, Commander, U.S. Pacific Command, has directed the Carl Vinson Strike Group to sail north and report on station in the Western Pacific Ocean after departing Singapore April 8th. Exhibit B. News confirmed by U.S. defense official to CNN. A U.S. aircraft carrier-led strike group is headed toward the Western Pacific Ocean near the Korean Peninsula, a U.S. defense official confirmed to CNN. That's on April 8th. On April 13th, the official story was still that the Vinson was headed toward North Korea. Then, on April 17th, the publication Defense News pointed to a picture that on April 15th, the Carl Vinson was 3,000 miles away from the Korean peninsula, in the Sunda Strait, down by Indonesia. Pacific Command's only official comment on the controversy was tweeting a 70-year-old cartoon showing Admiral Halsey rebutting some fake news, in this case Japanese propaganda that it had driven the Third Fleet out of the Western Pacific in 1944. We are retiring at high speed toward the Japanese fleet. In an embarrassing situation like this, what does the Navy do? It turns to the New York Times motto, "The truth is under attack." On April 20th, the New York Times published Trump Unleashes the Generals. They don't always see the big picture. It places Admiral Harry Harris at the center of the Carl Vinson narrative. Don't let the title fool you. Admiral Harris is the ultimate big picture guy in Asia. Admiral Harris is the commander of PACOM, United States Pacific Command. He is responsible for U.S. military operations over half the world's surface, from the U.S. West Coast over to India and up and down to the North and South Poles. He's an admiral because PACOM's headquartered at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii and has got lots of ships, and it's always run by an admiral. But all the U.S. Army, Marine, and Air Force units in the region report to him, including U.S. Army Korea, all that stuff in Japan, as well as the Pacific Fleet with the carrier strike groups and the submarines. That's 375,000 people. He's got his own intelligence service. He's also hands-on in managing the U.S. military relationship with treaty allies. That's Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, Australia, and Thailand. In the Roman Empire, this kind of guy was called a proconsul. You can call him Admiral Harris. And Admiral Harris knows where all his aircraft carriers are, even if Donald Trump doesn't. So, what's the story about Admiral Harris and the Carl Vinson, according to the New York Times? It goes like this. When Admiral Harry B. Harris, Jr., the military's top commander in the Pacific, ordered the aircraft carrier Vinson to sail north from Singapore this month, he was oblivious to the larger and incorrect impression that he was rushing a naval strike force to confront an increasingly belligerent North Korea. Navy officials said the main reason for issuing the release was to alert the families of thousands of sailors that Admiral Harris had also canceled a port call for the ships in Fremantle, Australia, where many relatives were planning to meet their loved ones. Admiral Harris feared that images of sailors on shore leave would be unseemly at a time when North Korea was firing missiles, Navy officials said. But the news release omitted any mention of a secretive naval exercise with Australia that Admiral Harris never meant to suggest he was canceling, Navy officials said. So, are we to understand Admiral Harris, in the words of the New York Times, was oblivious to Trump administration plans for the Carl Vinson off Korea and simply announced the Vinson was sailing to the Western Pacific in order to have an excuse to cancel an unseemly port visit? Really? This is weak, even by the standards of totally in-the-tank national security reporting. How can I be so bold as to say this? Because on April 12th, Admiral Harris was giving a speech in Chicago, and in discussing Korean tensions, he said this.
That's why the USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group is heading back to Northeast Asia.
No, Admiral Harris was not oblivious to the Trump administration's desire for a show of force against North Korea, and I think he knew that the Vinson was wanted up there. As another data point, recall that on the same day, April 12th, the U.S. Air Force Base at Kadena in Japan, which is also under Admiral Harris and PACOM, put every plane it had on the runway in tight formation, fully fueled and armed as a show of force against North Korea. It's called an elephant walk. The unavoidable inference is that PACOM knew it was tasked with making a big show of force to communicate U.S. resolve on North Korea, and the Vinson was supposed to be part of it. To me, the most likely explanation is that Admiral Harris knew that the USS Carl Vinson was wanted for that show of force off North Korea, but he didn't want to send it right away. Why not? Well, my understanding of PACOM's priorities are something like this. PACOM's most important relationships are with the militaries of treaty allies in the Pacific. That's Japan, Australia, South Korea, Thailand, and the Philippines. Next come civilians, including all those politicians who run governments around the world and in the United States and make things complicated for military people. At the very bottom of the pyramid of friendship, you find Chinese communists, the Chi-Coms. Admiral Harris is very much the China hawk. He sees his job as fighting a never-ending battle against PRC expansionism and aggression in Asia, and to be prepared to fight and win a super, mega, colossal war with China for the future of the world, if necessary. The simplest inference would be that Admiral Harris did not like the idea of canceling a military exercise with treaty ally Australia to hurry his strike group up to Korea to help civilian Donald Trump and the Chinese communists pressure North Korea. Simple peek, in other words. Trump can't order up a carrier group like a pizza, especially to serve the Chi-Coms. It'll get up there when we're done with our exercises with our friends in Australia. Not a terribly big deal, perhaps. There's no hurry anyway. Diplomacy's been penciled in for the next few weeks. The Trump administration has signaled it's giving China, diplomacy, and whatever it's doing with North Korea behind the scenes about a month to shake out before it gets serious about any kind of attack. So, it was understandable that there might be some strategic ambiguity about the location of the Vinson, and maybe it would have been okay for the Vinson to have been dawdling around Indonesia instead of rushing to Korea. One retired Navy aviator speculated that perhaps the Vinson was taking its time to get its pilots current on carrier night landings so it'd be ready for big doings the moment it arrived off Korea. But riddle me this. If there really was some idea like, let's fool Kim Jong-un into thinking the Vinson's on its way when it's actually down here in Australia, so I don't need to send it now, that doesn't really explain why the Navy blew the Vinson's cover with the Sunda Strait picture, now does it? If the actual whereabouts of the Vinson was a secret, and a rather embarrassing secret at that, why was the photo showing the Vinson in the Sunda Strait officially released by the United States Navy? Not just a picture, but a picture with a helpful caption, dated April 15th, stating, "The USS Carl Vinson transits the Sunda Strait." It seems to me the main issue here is the U.S. Navy revealing the location of its strike force and causing an international incident. Standard policy? Honest goof? Bit of a stretch. Especially when the Facebook page of the Carl Vinson has permanently pinned this notice: "Loose lips sink ships. Any discussion or speculation of the ship's location or anticipated import dates before they're officially released may result in revocation of access to this page. Remember, the bad guys do follow our Facebook page too." Because Newsbud viewers deserve the best, I queried the U.S. Navy Media Center about this, and they answered. All hail Newsbud. They said, "Thank you for your query. The Navy routinely releases imagery of operational units to tell the Navy's story in a timely manner, while mindful of operational security." Awesome! Newsbud, in my opinion, did better than Navy Times. In the version the Navy Times got, which took 8 anonymous sources to work up, there was a crisis caused by the non-movement north of the Vinson, and it was really bad. Then somehow the Sunda Strait photo appeared in Defense News, and the crisis got really, really bad. Problem solved. The end. In my opinion, the simplest story is still the most plausible. Admiral Harris ignored Trump and kept the Vinson strike group down in Australia to complete the exercises. When things got a little too hot, the Navy dropped the photo and tried to walk away or sail away from the problem. But maybe Admiral Harris, or whoever got that photo to Defense News, had more in mind than making a bad situation worse. Maybe he or she actually wanted the so-called U.S. show of resolve to look like a sham. One thing that's becoming clearer and clearer is that China hawks detest the idea that Trump is reaching out to Xi Jinping to work together on pressuring North Korea. Bargaining doesn't work. Deals with China are bad. Makes us look weak in front of the Asians. Maybe to the hawks, sabotaging what they see as a flawed gambit to solve the Korean nuclear conundrum is an acceptable price to pay for making sure U.S.-China policy is not fatally polluted by appeasement. It wouldn't be the first time. On the last day before Truman relieved him in 1951, Douglas MacArthur tried to spread the Korean War into China to keep it from flaming out. You can get the details on this little-known chunk of Asian history, and much more if you join Newsbud and go behind the paywall to view this week's episode of Asia Brief, Annals of Insubordination in Korea. That's a teaser, folks. Maybe Admiral Harris, like everybody else in Washington, knows that Kim Jong-un wants to tilt toward the United States, and he thinks it's ridiculous to involve China and let the PRC gain credibility in Asia, both as a regional power and a U.S. partner, by being part of a win on North Korea. The good news is, if you're a fan of civilian control of the military anyway, is that now the Carl Vinson apparently is really heading toward Korean waters. There's also confirmation that 2 Japanese destroyers will join the Vinson Carrier Strike Group for exercises along the way. But no confirmation as yet U.S. and Japanese forces will jointly sail off North Korea. Anyway, we'll see. If Admiral Harris wants to shut down the China track on North Korea, it's probably going to happen. Asia is PACOM's world. We just live in it. Finally, concerning Donald Trump's statement that Xi Jinping told him Korea used to be part of China? If Xi Jinping actually said that, instead of something like, Korea was in a subordinate relationship with Chinese dynasties a lot of the time, that was a pretty major diplomatic clangor that would rightfully infuriate Koreans. The height of non-Korean domination of the Korean peninsula prior to the modern era was during the Yuan dynasty of the 14th century, which meant Mongol rule. The Mongols imposed their own military and administrative institutions in Korea and gave them paramount power. But even so, the administration was staffed by the Korean royal family and its appointees, and Korea was never completely incorporated into the empire. Korea's sovereignty was only extinguished by its annexation by Japan in 1910, and the legal validity of the Japanese annexation is still contested by Koreans. Just so you know. That's all for this week. Thanks for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, go to newsbud.com, where you'll find exclusive content available only to the Newsbud community, including my Asia Brief reports and the opportunity to interact with me on the China Watch show pages. You can also enroll in the Newsbud Academy for Dr. Philip Kovacevich's course on U.S. Anglo-Russian geopolitics. See you there. I'm Peter Lee for Newsbud's China Watch.
This is a special announcement. Newsbud is proud to offer something you won't find on other news sites. Welcome to Newsbud Academy. For the first time, Newsbud is offering online courses brought to you by the top experts in their field, while academia across the U.S. are attempting to train people to handle fake news. Newsbud Academy will bring graduate-level learning right into your home, without the burden of expensive student loans. Newsbud Academy is for everyone. Whether you are already an expert or just getting started, Newsbud Academy will provide you with the tools that you need to fully understand the important issues. Want a better understanding of the complicated world that we live in? Want to know what's really going on geopolitically? The Newsbud Academy is for you. The first course offered by Newsbud Academy is the Foundation of Anglo-American and Russian Geopolitics, hosted by Professor Philip Kovacevich. Professor Philip Kovacevich has taught all over the globe. He has been invited to lecture throughout the US, Europe, and the former Soviet Union. Professor Kovacevich currently teaches at the University of San Francisco. At Newsbud, he is a senior geopolitical analyst and hosts a weekly show, the Russian Newspaper Monitor. Professor Kovacevich will be in studio at Newsbud headquarters to bring you the first Newsbud Academy. The aim of this course is to provide conceptual tools to understand, explain, and predict political events which are shaking to the core the political status quo all across the world, especially in Europe and Asia. The first Newsbud Academy will be offered on the weekend of Saturday, June 10th and Sunday, June 11th, but the enrollment period starts now, and space is limited, so do not wait. Go to newsbud.com or click the link below to register today. Your registration includes the full Newsbud Academy Geopolitical course hosted by Professor Philip Kovacevic. The course will be 6 hours long, spread over 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, 3 hours each day, and will include a live Q&A session with the professor each day. You will also receive a certificate of completion and a DVD of the course, plus a Newsbud hat. Registration is limited for the Newsbud Academy, so go to newsbud.com for more information and sign up today.